October 7th special board meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'd like to have a moment of silence to remember Ted Becker. Ted Becker passed away yesterday. And he will be a tremendous loss to the city of Lewes, the community, and to the state in general. So we'll just send our wishes to Joe. Okay, thank you very much. So much paper.
That's what I meant.
All right, so, we have the entire board here: Bob Heffernan, Richard Nichols, Barbara Curtis, Preston Lee. We have our general manager, Austin Callerman, Andrew. Oh, I'm sorry. Whoa, it's way out there. Our general manager, Austin Callerman. Andrew had another meeting to go to. Robin Davis, the assistant general manager, and Michael Hoffman will be played by Max Walton tonight. And for all those you don't know, Mike got married on Saturday, so, but Max will do a fine job. All right. So,
We need a moment of silence for,
well, for which one? So the purpose of this meeting is to discuss the strategic plan. We discussed it at one of the prior board meetings, I can't remember which, and decided that it was best for the board to be able to discuss it internally. And I'll start it out by saying that we know there are two things that need to be updated in the strategic plan. When we started this process, PFAS and lead and copper had not become the significant issue that they are now. So I think those are the two items that I know need to be revised in here. And also, I'm going to sit back mostly and let the other four board members discuss the pros and cons and what you'd like to see in the strategic plan from either a methodology or changes. So at that point, Patrick, if you can lead us off.
Sure, actually, I'm gonna have Eileen lead us off. She
Oh,
can,
okay, I'm sorry.
Take us through the, sort of the history. Thought that would be beneficial since, we have new board members who were part of the process when we went through it in 2019. So just to give you a little bit of background before we start the discussion.
Okay. So I'm ready. I've pulled some of the things from your agenda into a little PowerPoint and just have some slides to walk you through the history of how we got here. Press will remember, maybe, I'm gray now. Took advantage of yes, I took advantage of COVID and let my hair grow out. So I took some of your questions and worked it in, and what I wanted to do was just walk you through what we did in 2019 and then get you up to date on where we are now and how we got there, and then save a lot of time for the discussion portion of it. But just to give you some, oops, I pressed.
You're good. I'm just trying to get this stuff together right here.
Two little clickers.
All right. I'm just going to start talking. In 2019, what we did was start with a blank piece of paper and looked at what goals, what objectives, what strategies, principles, visions, looked at everything and really took it down to, here's our blank piece of paper, let's start with a strategic plan. So when we came in, the first thing we did, we worked with, I'm going to walk you about who was involved. There we go. So we were involved with the board, some staff members. We had identified a focus group at one point with some community leaders for some of your larger customers, and those were the participants that we worked with for the whole building of that plan. And we used all the strategic planning elements that you can think of when you're working on a strategic plan. So we did some initial kickoff meetings with each of the board members, some of the staff members. That's super helpful for us as we start facilitating a plan to be able to dip our toe in the water, know what's important to each person, let you talk a little bit about what you're expecting, but also gives us a feel for some patterns, some practices, personality of your group, and what everyone's trying to accomplish in the plan. So we did those kickoff meetings similar to what we did this time. We had a workshop where we just focused on mission, vision, values, and talking about what you wanted your plan to look like. Identified that we wanted a focus group. That was about the time when we identified how long the plan would look, that it would be a 10-year outlook. We identified that we wanted to do a customer survey. We did those things, and then we came back with a lot of information and spent 2 days, maybe, 8 hours, and another 4 hours upstairs in what used to be a conference room is now Austin's office, with Post-it notes all over the walls and stickers, and really worked at categorizing and prioritizing all the things that we had found out so we could figure out what were the things that were most important to the BPW and how we would move forward. We did a SWOT analysis. That's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and talked about what we learned from all of the different focus group meetings, and then came back another time and finalized what the priorities and objectives would look like. So we'll move to the vision. As a group, we built this sentence that had to do with where you see the BPW in 10 years. What is the direction we're heading? What is it that is looking to be accomplished from the strategic plan? We also looked at what the mission is. That is, why does this group exist? Who do you serve? What do you do? Why are you here? And we looked at what the values or the guiding principles are about the group and the organization, and that's where we landed on these guiding principles. So that was based on some of the feedback that we had received, the meetings that we held, as well as whatever existed before in terms of values and mission for the BPW. So we're now at what are those guiding principles? So one is service excellence, having to do with responding to your customer needs and the various ways that you respond to those. Financial health, which is assuring that the BPW has finances and can do the things that it wants to do and has money in the bank to do all the things outlined in your plan. We looked at safety, we looked at organization and the workforce development, your environmental stewardship, and community involvement. We used the lighthouse as a little bit of a symbol. We had a vision, where we're going, the mission, what it is that we do, principles, what's guiding us, and then we moved into strategic focus areas. So we're still back in 2019. When I talked about this SWOT analysis, after we took all those boards down and all the stickers and we all voted on what was the most popular idea, we categorized it into these buckets to say these are the things that are most important and gave each of those a heading. So we had an environmental focus area, an operational, we had a growth, communication, infrastructure, and some level of collaboration or community interaction. And then there were a lot of objectives under that. There were a lot of things to get done. There we go. So we narrowed it down to those focus areas. And then with each of those focus areas, the group identified some objectives, the things that they wanted to work on over the next 10 years that would help them to achieve the vision that we had set out in the beginning. So we've got, I don't know that I want to read all of these to you, but you had strategic objectives related to infrastructure, engagement, administrative operations, growth, environmental stewardship. So that's how we got through 2019, looking at it being a 10-year outlook. So fast forward now to 2024, the process here was come back, update the plan, run a customer service survey to benchmark how we're performing before and now, so the questions were the same, and to update what was then the back section of the book, all of those objectives, focus areas, and gets caught up on what has been done, what hasn't been done, what doesn't need to be done anymore because the world changed, or what's missing on the plan. So we've been working with a smaller group. As you know, Tom, Barbara, Austin, Robin, Sharon, and Patrick and I getting together. Now, as part of this process, we did a kickoff where Patrick did some interviews with everyone to get a feel for what was on your mind, what you were expecting, things that you had questions about. Then we initiated the customer survey, again, to benchmark against what happened in 2019, and it also allows us to measure some results of the plan halfway through the process. We met with the committee to identify areas to address in the plan. We looked at successes, unchanged, untouched pieces, changes that need to come, and then we looked mostly at the last section of the book, which were the objectives and the progress on each of those. So changes that happened in the book. We removed growth as an objective because most of the items that were listed under growth got repositioned into other places, and it felt like there was nothing there at the moment, so it went away, and we refocused those efforts into other strategic focus areas. And we identified some completed objectives. So by doing the survey, for example, we learned that people can navigate better through the process of the website. That was one of the objectives that was set up in the 2019 early stages of the plan, and now we're seeing that, yes, in fact, that worked. We can mark that as completed. So you're seeing on the slide some of the things that have changed and got marked as updated, but I'm going to walk you through what the plan looks like in a second, the newer piece that I handed out, and you'll see where those are noted. So the strategic focus areas went down to 4, and we moved environmental stewardship up higher because it was more of a priority. We have these same pieces with some. We looked at the customer surveys. So brought a couple slides. I don't expect that you can read the numbers or even know what the words say. I wanted you to see how the lines look. So blue is showing you what happened in 2019, and orange is showing you what happened in 2024. The same questions were asked of your customer base, and your answers are coming back pretty close to the same in most areas. They're satisfied, how they feel about certain areas, and which neighborhood do you reside was also very similar in types of responses. I don't know if you got the full book. Yeah, okay. All the pages. So let me take you to the little piece that I handed out because you didn't have enough copies of the plan. I brought you another one. And the thing that's different on this one, as opposed to what you may have seen a few weeks ago, is what's happening on page 11. We separated the actions and milestones out from the front of the book. So as I said, we didn't look at vision, mission, principles. That was staying the same. What our objective was to update the actions and milestones in the back of the book. So I think a place where if you hadn't been part of the process before or didn't know what you were looking at, you didn't realize on pages 9 and 10, that those focus areas were listed. And then what's happening from page 12 back is more focused on the objectives that you had set and what the status and update has been since 2019. So there were a variety of places where things were being tracked and different pieces of paper that we garnered from you to say, okay, how are we doing on certain pieces? And that's why you're seeing the different dates. So you can see we wanted to, I'm going to be on page 12, item number 1, conduct capacity study with a 10-year horizon. So now you're seeing what progress got made on that particular objective. As you would have gone through this, you would see that some of them had check marks, some of them showed other progress toward how you were progressing. Some were marked because 2 good things happen in a strategic plan. 1, you finished something and you marked done and you moved to the next stepping stone. We had to do this piece first before we could go to the next step. There were quite a few check marks in here. The other neat thing is when you identify something that has to get addressed and you work it into a system. So you did the do not flush the wipes campaign. Now you have a process for how you interact with your community, make a change for something, communicate back out with them because you did that one. I'm looking, page 13, Austin, you mentioned about the new pump stations every time you go in. You have both SCADA and individual flow meters. Well, that was something that fell out of the plan because you said you wanted to address I&I. And over the course of 3 years, you made some upgrades, recognized things, and now it's a system that the group does every time, and it's meeting the objectives on that one. That was the end of how to look at the path forward. Questions yet? You've got a lot of pieces of paper in front of you. So I'm a big proponent of strategic plans, obviously. But I think they're a very powerful tool if we can get the right words and the right feelings and the consensus from you to be able to carry them forward. Austin's putting out fires every single day. Robin's right there. You know, if we could figure out a way to move some of those triggers out of the way so there aren't so many fires to put out. How do you move forward and concentrate on the day-to-day? And that's what this can do if we get the right kind of word, context, consensus across the group. So I'm going to let you jump in.
Sure.
I think we're done.
So at this point, I guess, we can hopefully look at, what are some of the things you want to see differently and what's been presented so far. There are a couple things that when we started, we're sort of in midstream and have changed, one of them being the PFAS, lead and copper has risen to the top. Finance was definitely a pretty common theme that I heard when I did the interviews, and I think that probably should have its own bullet point, perhaps as a strategic focus area. The rate study, I believe, was sort of in midstream. I'm not sure if that's been completed at this point. So that's one piece of it. And then, of course, the waste treatment plant was something else that was sort of also in midstream and perhaps still in play. So I guess the first question moving forward is in terms of new board members and where you want to move forward from here. The mission statement, vision, guiding principles. I'm not sure that any of those should change. I'm not sure if you've had those discussions. It seemed like something that, it's why you exist. It's what you do, how you live every day, how you go to the next strategic objective and the tactics, looking back on those very things to make sure that you're in line with what you're doing. So I guess the first topic of discussion would be, is that going to, are any of those pieces going to change?
Well, I guess, being involved in that first plan, I'm spoiled because that was so invigorating. So involved, so much time spent talking to people and getting views and working down issues and this thing. That was really involved, and you just see it coming together, and the thing we ended up with was something we created, and it was, a live document. I think we made a mistake back then in that I don't think we should have had a 10-year plan. I think it should have been a 5-year plan. So much has changed, obviously, but I think it would be good for everybody to be involved, maybe not the same degree, but more than what we're doing now. From the last 5 years, we've done an update, just a quick, dirty, not anything like this, each year about things that were on the list, what would come on, what we completed. And this seems more like that, like just another check off the issues, and there's new things on here, but a lot of the same questions are being asked about what were of interest then. You brought some new ones in, but so it doesn't, and we were then asked to just take a look at things that were prepared, and if you have any comments on them. The creative process wasn't the same as doing a checklist of things. And going through the original one, we had discussions about all different topics maybe that weren't in here that worked their way to the top. Here we had basically the same topics primarily that were just checking status of and updating and adding a few. So that's the only comment I was, when I saw what we got, I thought, nobody had a chance to comment because of FOIA. You can't bring it up and discuss as a group. So it seemed to me we didn't bring anybody from the outside in, which was really helpful, I thought, the last time. So I felt like we were talking to ourselves and not going out and identifying people that have a stake in what we do. So I don't think this thing has nearly the impact that I remember from the last. So I wish we had done a little more outreach, a little more talking about issues before we got to this stage. I still think there's a chance we could do some of that outreach if the board was so interested in doing that. But
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, in being asked to do the update, particularly after we got the survey results that looked very similar, had made progress in some areas, and obviously represent, constituents, and during the interviews, it didn't seem like there were things that certainly rose a little bit higher than previously. Environmental stewardship for sure, finance, yeah, absolutely. But those big buckets didn't feel like they changed. But the board has changed, so
things like rusty pipes was mentioned and it was important, but we're under a lot of pressure now. That's really a top list item. I think of course the ready to serve charge has always been discussion, and I think that was probably the second most commented on in the responses. I think you saw that, and I think we should somehow highlight that and get the word out in white papers or in more discussions at our meetings. Although you can see nobody shows up at our meetings, a few good people back there. So somehow we've got to get over that hump to educate people, particularly the people that live here year-round that benefit from this. Some of them are still don't realize what it is and why we can't lower that, and somehow education has to occur.
So, Patrick, first thing, Press, you and I are the only one left on the board from the original go-around.
It's 3 to 2.
So, the first time, as Elliot pointed out, we were working from a blank sheet of paper. And it was validated with the customer surveys, as Patrick just said. So I'm questioning, and this is up to the rest of the board to decide, the value of recreating that in-depth process, which I thought was excellent the first time. I mean, between what Patrick and Elaine did and the interaction. But I'm not sure that any of that would impact what we're focusing on. And things like the rusty pipes, they're in our capital budget, and we've got a plan for that. I'm not sure how that fits into, if you're already working a plan.
Well, I think where it fits into, from my understanding, we have, particularly anyway in town that's really high on that, and that coming to put pressure on us. I think it's more public education I think we should show what our pipes are out there, and let our clients know what our schedule is, because we kind of have a schedule, and it's not real tight, about where we are and where we're going and when we're going to get to their house, and that type of thing, and explain to them the depth of the problem and the financial ramifications of the issues, and just educate them. So there are things we can do.
And the other one, the readiness to serve. I mean, we've been discussing that, trying to educate, and I'm not sure that there's anything different. I mean, we've tried many things,
Well, I mean, like,
the prior administration and the current administration.
I prepared a revised white paper. Candace did one years ago that we had, and I did, a mock-up of maybe a new approach to it that we can send out, either with our bills or special notices or things like that, to keep that in front of people, maybe explain it a little bit better. We even have to try to, next workshop, we have something else, get it into that so that people can.
At that point, then I'm sure.
Okay, having been on the subcommittee working on this, I agree with a lot of what Press said. I kind of wish we had started with a blank slate again. Not necessarily the public involvement very much, because we did have the survey, and the survey tells us what the public wants. But I had a hard time in my own mind recognizing that we weren't going to change our guiding principles and our areas of focus, that sort of thing. Because some of them I think are obsolete. And then when we got to the updates, that was nice, but it wasn't strategic, really. If we could have used the updates to just knock out the things that can come off and then take it from there, I would have felt more comfortable with it. But I felt like we were not really doing strategic plan update, but just repackaging what we'd already done. Part of it, I think, is the problem with FOIA. If we had known practically nobody was going to be here, we could have had the whole team here and done it under open government and really hash through what are our priorities now? What do we see as our strategic focus areas? For me, they're things like, I ran on an environmental platform. I'm very concerned about how we're going to make our systems more resilient and deal with the global warming. And it's not just the wastewater treatment plant. I'm very concerned about the electric system and the demands on our power and what we're going to do for that. I would like to have seen more of a change in focus on those things. And also, we're all very aware now cybersecurity is very, very important, and that doesn't really jump out at us that that's something we need to be focusing on. Yeah, those are the kinds of things I was concerned with. Obviously, the engagement is important, but we have a hard time getting engagement with the public. Having the right people is very important, and having the finances. They're all strategic areas. I think we've made some good progress on the financial area, and we're making some more by getting more involved and learning more about what grants are available to us and pursuing them. Because if we're going to be resilient, if we're going to plan for the future, we've got to fund it, and we've got to make sure we're funding it in the right way, with the least pain to our customers and ourselves. And, I would have liked some brainstorming about how we're going to do those things as part of our strategic plan.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What happens to this strategic plan? What's the purpose? Does this get mailed out to everyone? Is it distributed? Is it?
It's primarily a tool for you to go back and make sure it becomes your operational plan every year. So, and I think a lot of what I'm hearing is that the focus areas really aren't perhaps changing, but they're being reprioritized, and you want to come up with new tactics in those specific focus areas. Environmental stewardship is still there.
So it's more of an internal document guideline?
Of course, it's external too, so people know what you're doing, so that they know the things that you mentioned about the rusty water is something that's not being ignored. It's being worked on, but there are lots of components to making that happen. But yeah,
Guidelines from the board to help
correct.
general manager and his staff do their jobs and do their priorities.
Correct. And coming up with this specific, tactics, for all those things, resiliency, okay, so what are the very specific things you're planning, a new facility? What are the things specifically regarding resiliency that have to be part of that plan? And that's Austin, Robin, and Sharon's, and the rest of the staff to come up with ways to make sure that happens. It is literally a guiding document to check yourselves, to make sure that, here are the things that we said are important, and here are the various things that we're going to work on in this coming year to make sure that we're staying on track. So things do change. The PFAS is something that's, was not something 5 years ago that came up. So there's always in various focus areas that new things are going to come up, and new objectives and tactics are going to have to be developed by all of you as a board and the staff to respond to it.
Yeah, I think, to reiterate, this is an internal document for guiding us and the staff, as you said. It's posted on the website, it's available, we can send out an email blast saying it's up there. There aren't things in here where we're actioning the public to do anything. We're actioning ourselves to do things. Any strategic plan I've been involved in, that's been what I have always been used to.
If it's going to be public information, which I think it should be, people are going to look at it and they're going to say, on page 15, this item here, you're not doing this. How come I'm not getting my pipes replaced?
Well, that would be a good question, though. That keeps us on our toes.
But to anticipate those kinds of questions by making sure that we are explaining or crafting the words that are most helpful in preempting a cheap shot of, oh, wait a minute, you said you're going to do this by such and such a date, or whatever. And I don't know that this is doing that.
Do the actions and milestones go on the website as well?
So they're on for every year. Typically, we do it the month after we do budget, so it's typically April. So Press did them once or twice when you were president, and then Tom.
I think I did them all after the first year.
Okay. I don't remember because I took
was assigned
over.
by the prior administration to do it.
Yeah. But then you brought that document to the board and had that discussion in an open setting and provided the
Yeah.
feedback. With the document, it's typically a red line.
Matter of fact, what I did was, if you go back and you look at the one I presented this year, it has all the updates from the prior years. And I was running out of colors, so I'm glad we're doing this. Because,
But it doesn't have much going in 2025, 6,
no,
7, 8.
It was strictly retrospective, the update was, this was the action, we've done this. This is the action, this is what, this portion of it was done.
But there seem to be
It's,
things on here of the action that was,
Right.
on 2022 or
No, I-
23, and there's a blank, what is happening with that now?
that's still open.
That could help guide, well, where are we going with it? It's still open. If it was noted at 2022, I mean, why is it still open? Or, what's an update rather than just, it's the same as what was there in the original 2019 update.
Yeah, and I was confused on why the things we've accomplished don't just drop off.
They can.
Yeah.
They can go away.
It all depends on what you want to show. So like if you want this to be a living document that you would update periodically, do you want that history? I mean, I think the complexity here is that the plan that was done in 2019 was 10 years. And so, we talked internally and I feel like we can all agree that 10 years is too long. So, okay, so now you're at 5. The problem is that when we came and we had this discussion, we were basing it off a 10-year, which made more sense to update the document looking forward to the next 5. It seems as though kind of where Patrick was going, you want to take a step further back and kind of not necessarily go back and change vision, mission, et cetera, but go kind of to the beginning of the process, restabilize where we want to go, like the environmental stewardship, adding the financial aspect, and then kind of going from there. You got to think, in 2019, we had nothing to go off of. So we were at the very, very bottom. And so how much of that do you want to use going forward? And I think that's where we stand today, trying to get where you guys envision that and where you want to benchmark yourselves, where you want to start. And then we can kind of collectively get an idea of, is this going to be a Barbara and Tom involved in coming back to the board, or is this more of, we're going to have more workshops that involve going deeper into the discussion?
And, you mentioned maybe it's not necessary to go outside because we've got so many comments, but, I think we should be in touch with our key clients, the hospital, SPI, and somebody that represent the merchants in town, the developers, get their input about what we're doing right and wrong, things like that came up in previous.
And I think Austin does a phenomenal job of that. And I have a good relationship with RL at the hospital, and I talk to him on occasion. And, it's up to the board. The reason why the ones that have been completed, the check marks were left in here, was out of transparency also. That otherwise, the public's going to say, well, whatever happened to that item? And here, it shows how it was closed. And, at some point, maybe in the next one, we should drop the first 5 years off.
Well, perhaps this is the chance to drop the first 5 years and make it an update of the 10-year plan,
I leave that up to you guys.
And from 2024 to 2029, and, benchmark, this is what we're looking forward, and we have left off things that are no longer, that we feel are not relevant from that earlier 5-year plan, and make it an update of 24 to 2019.
Yeah, I can argue both sides, and I don't know what the right answer is.
Well, I think, too, I'm glad you explained how you got here, because I sat down the first time and looked at it and sort of said, well, this doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Some of the things I thought was almost every item has, we need to communicate. We need to communicate sewers. We need to communicate electricity. We need to accumulate. I think what you need is a communication strategy. I don't know what it should be, but I'd take it out of all the little bits and pieces and say, you know, and the survey told us that some people like email, some people like phone, and some people like the web. And everybody else is a small number. So at some point, we develop a communication strategy that focuses on those things, you know, in print when you're doing a mailer. But it's also the case with communication that nobody really cares until it affects them, and then it's like, woe is me. You know, a communication strategy sort of that doesn't get in the way of what you're going to do with stormwater or sewer or something else. I think that ought to be pulled out and made separate. I think this plan certainly confuses operational efficiency and finance. And, you know, it's like, use our people well, you know, don't waste things, that sort of thing. That's different than finance that Richard's looking at, and they ought to be completely separate. I mean, because they are completely different things. So if you want to do an update to this, you can take a lot of comments and do, you know, with some changes. But you have some, so you can rewrite this to function that way, but you have to add in the list of offals that we have coming at us, whether it be PFAS or the sewer plant or lead pipes, and who's responsible for that, and those need to be elevated, you know, in the 5+ year time frame, because in some cases nobody knows what to do about them. But we sort of sense that there's big bucks out there somewhere. And, you know, they sort of become strategic issues. I mean, we really have, this is top of my head, so I won't tell you the number first, but we have the
42.
Well, I think there's a smaller number, okay? We have the sewage treatment plant, and that's going to come out one of 3 ways. We're going to continue to operate it, we're going to make a deal with the county, or we're going to make a deal with the county in Rehoboth. And we'll know here in a matter of months, but strategically, it's going to be one of those 3. We know we're going to do something with lead pipes. We don't know how much that's going to cost, but it's a big deal. It could cost, we replace up to this, or we need every plumber in Sussex County to help us. And it's a huge deal. we know we need to replace the infrastructure, and we have some of that built into capital, and we've made really good progress. I think we're over 50% completed, but, you know, there's the other 50%, and some of it's still 100 years old.
The MR5 or 4? Or,
You're talking about UCMR 5?
yeah.
That's just,
Stormwater? It's
no, that's
The MS4.
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 We're undesignated, so it's kind of a question mark.
What's that, stormwater?
Yeah.
But stormwater is certainly going to be an issue, a
It's-
strategic issue in
It's
the
not
next 5
probably as
years.
big and as costly as lead pipes, but it's a big issue for us.
It'd be depending on how, when you do your testing in various areas on your outfalls, and if you have, for whatever reason, high nitrates, then you have to do treatment at the site. You try and pinpoint where the issue is. Like, for example, just throwing it out there, typically like dog parks, you'll have high nitrates coming off the dog park just because of urine and feces. Sometimes you would have to put treatment in at the source, so wherever that would discharge to.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, for us, MS4 could be more significant than anything because we have 27 outfalls, 21?
It's 29, I think.
We got buku outfalls and
and-
there's no land at the end of them.
And so whatever you call that, stormwater in a big,
Yeah.
and it could be very big and very expensive, and then I think there are two more. One is electricity, and one is what we do when we get a storm. You know,
resilience.
well, almost, what are we going to do to clean up after it? Storm is the first thing, but do we have the financial management wherewithal to come back? And so however we update this, it seems to me like good work or great work 5 years ago, even getting to this point, and these are important, but going forward, it looks like there's a lot of storm clouds out there. And I mean, in the finance subcommittee, we asked Austin to make a list of, I forget, disasters or awfuls or things he worries about. Not to get him depressed, but it's sort of that list spread out and said, okay, well, we'll know more about PFAS, and we'll probably have to do something. We probably won't have to do anything about PFAS beyond what we're doing for a certain amount of time. But then we might have to do a lot. Or who knows? It may come down and be reasonable. But if that's not the case, there'll be some other thing like stormwater or electricity. And electricity breaks up into two parts: supply and what we can do to control and manage demand.
Yeah, I think, as everyone knows, we did approve an electrical mitigation team, and I have got several people interested, but I put it off till after January, just because we have too much on our plate. But that's been my concern, coming from
Yeah.
where I come from in the industry. And when we see what's happening down and the frequency of hurricanes, it's a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So I fully endorse that we need to do electrical resiliency both from a redundancy of source and from a hardening of the facilities.
And keeping our costs down too. I mean, if you do good demand control and so on, we probably avoid, a rate increase along the way or two.
Well, and I think we have that here under AMI.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Although, talking to the AMI guy at DMAC, it's pretty limited to what they can do.
we'll take that
That's later.
offline.
So, really good points, Bob. To get back to
Sorry.
what do we produce? I think it's nice to have the history, but I don't think it belongs in our strategic plan going forward. I think it just confuses and makes it look like, where are we? What is our plan? If you can take that and set it aside and have what we need to plan for, I think that would help.
An appendix.
Yeah, well, something like that, a report card from the first 5 years.
It's
And
a
our next 5
very
years.
easy thing to do. As I hear everyone talking, I'm sort of going back again, thinking about, sort of the reprioritization of some of the things that are listed under, looking at pages 7 through 13, well, actually 7 through 9, 10. Finance, I think, should definitely be a focus area, separated from the admin, has been brought up. But as I go through some of the individual focus areas, like infrastructure and what are some of the strategic objectives, many of the ones that were there before are still there. They're still an issue. You may wish to move those around or add things to them, but I feel like the focus areas are still very much valid, but need some reprioritization, a new one under finance. But the objectives perhaps need to change. But in many cases, I feel like what we've got here is consistent with what I'm hearing now, and I think what we heard through the interviews. So.
Yeah, this is the kind of conversations we've had earlier. About the deeper subjects.
How hard would it be to do a mock-up from what's been produced here and make it an update from 2024 to 2029? And
I'll let you, that's a pretty readily quick thing to do.
Shuffling into some of the points that Barbara, Bob, and other people have or haven't mentioned.
Let me make sure I captured everything. So we're going to have PFAS, lead and copper, electrical resiliency, and MS4. I was trying to keep notes, but I'm not sure that.
Right. Now, what
Wastewater treatment plant.
treatment plant
Actually,
we already
that's
have,
in here.
but-
Yeah, it's in there,
But, yeah.
but it continues.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying to add additional items.
right. And the
And
storm
to separate.
damage, storm recovery,
Somewhere, we'll see what, and separate financial from operational efficiency.
Yeah, that's.
That's a big one, I think.
Financial health of the board is what I was talking about, yeah. Because in this version that we got,
Yeah,
there's, whether Robin is efficient somehow ended up in the same category as the investment portfolio.
and
Robin should be efficient and the investment portfolio should be prosperous.
And Austin, storm recovery, isn't that in our disaster or our mitigation plan?
Yeah, I mean, we have it in our ERP,
Yeah,
but it's not necessarily, it's talking about what we do in terms of disasters. But I think where Bob's hitting at is looking at, okay, how do you pay for all of this? So naturally, if a hurricane comes, I'm gonna call DMEC and go through the mutual aid process. But I think Bob's looking the step after that. How do you recover after a storm? Building in transmission lines, coordination with DP&L, what happens after necessarily.
and spanning the period between when you get the funds and when you have to restore, which can be a year.
Yeah, my experience is FEMA is great. They show up, set up signs and trailers and say this way to fill out the paperwork. And they're excellent at it. But then, the form needs your license, which may no longer exist, or so that process just takes a long time, and then the money doesn't. It's not like they hand you the credit card and you go and buy new clothes, or.
It seems like you're gonna still keep infrastructure, environmental stewardship, engagement, administrative operations, and then you're gonna add either something along the lines of financial stability or fiduciary responsibility.
Right.
And those would be, you're basically adding one additional one, which would be the finance part, and then what I believe I'm hearing is you don't want to see what was done in the past, and you want something new, because this is the past. Anybody that wants this can pick up to 2019. You want to see from 2024 to 2029 with it can be items from the 2019 to 2024, but not necessarily the background of how it got to that plan or where it's going moving forward. You just want that snapshot in time, not looking behind, but only looking forward.
What do you see?
To Richard's point, I think there are probably some things in there that turn out to be not so necessary.
Yeah.
And they could just be dropped. I mean, maybe for transparency reasons, you want to say we're dropping them because there's a better way or a different way.
So, your communication comment, where do you see that in all this? Do you see it as a separate item?
First of all, I see it as a frustration for everybody on the board. You hear Austin sometimes say, I told him that. I sent it to him. I have the email I sent it to him with, but people don't listen. That's why advertisers repeat the same thing so many times.
And along those lines, I would suggest that on page 19, item 5, there's that part of that's complete, but part of it is consider hiring a PR person. That's not complete. That's something we're still considering. So I think the check mark needs to come off that.
And, give yourself credit for the recent event. Austin and Tom and the website and all of that worked, okay? I'm just saying that it's not really overall communications is certainly important and certainly helps the reputation, but it's not really part of stormwater unless, as separate from sewer, separate from electricity.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we learned a lot, and Austin's made a lot of changes based upon the canal crossing failure. So,
You know.
but that's what the purpose of life is.
And we did, I think, great, okay? Timely, accurate. When it turned out not to be this, we found out it was that and went for it. And, did we answer every question of all the people in Lewes in the service area? No, but what they did get was as timely and accurate and as
It
it
helps
could be.
strengthen our relationship with the city as far as communication there,
Yeah.
so.
So I just say that it's an area of focus, and the people have told us how they want to hear from us.
Which is every way possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Cyber also, you want to put in cyber?
That would fall under administrative operations.
Yeah, there is
I
some
thought we
mention,
had
there
cyber
is
in
some
here.
cyber in there, but
There is.
it sounded like you had a practice in place, so we didn't make it a priority again because you already have things going on. And I agree, communication would fit in the engagement focus area to create more of a strategy around how you're communicating everything and making it a part of a practice.
Yeah, because Josh and Mike, that's how we got to the new mail system, the new servers.
Yeah, I think that's good. And
I get far less spam on my BPW account than I do on my other secure account.
So I think, having said finance is an, important part that should be a focus area, seems to be common agreement with everyone. And, if we could develop the sort of the statement around that would be sort of the next step. And then objectives, of course, what are some specific things under that you'd like to be able to do over the next 5 years that are important to the organization. But then the other areas, the infrastructure, we have 6 or 7 under each of those. Some of those might drop off, they're no longer important, or they have a higher priority. One thing to keep in mind is, there's, the more you have, the likelihood of getting them all done becomes less likely. So you don't want to give yourselves too many of them. Make sure the ones that you have there are, 5 or 6 that are achievable, and figure out how are you going to actually measure it a year from now, once it becomes, an operational kind of goal to make. So I guess I would say, moving forward, if, to get this to the next step, easy to separate the history. We don't need the history, we can make this a new plan. And then if you can talk about all the specific objectives under each focus area, as well as the statement itself, should that change under infrastructure or environmental stewardship, and then come up with what are some specific objectives that are now important based on, what's happening today.
The original summary of the discovery session, there are these brought up 30 or so topics, and we ranked them 1, 2, 3 priorities. To go to that point, do you think?
Yeah, we could we could go back to, I have all the notes from the interviews of individually interviewing all of you and staff. I think we could probably develop
Yeah.
that checklist based on
It's how
that.
to interact with you.
Under FOIA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you each answer an individual search? So what he's showing you is a matrix of all the priorities, and you got to vote on a scale of 1 to 5, and we added up what the votes were to be able to see what was the priority for all of you. In the room, you got stickers, and you got to put your colored sticker on the little box.
Forwards all the way
Yeah, all the way around, but we got to see very clearly what was a priority for the whole group and be able to talk about those, and that's what rose to the top.
Or we could prepare that and have that session, like this. And if you decided that there are key customers that you want to invite, that we did the last time, we could do that too. Clearly there's some more objectives and things that have fallen off. Some things are now what they weren't before, like PFAS and lead and copper. But I do feel like, the overall is very much the same. I hear, the objectives are a little bit different, but those primary focus areas, with the exception of finance, have not really changed in terms of, having done all the interviews and hearing what people are saying now. And I think that might be a good path forward.
And the comments from the surveys that we did, they listed our priorities, highest ranks and so forth. The other thing that we're talking about, pipe issue, it seems Sharon, you mentioned, it seems to be a lot of people from the subdivision. Of course, that's a big topic for them, so that may have overweighted just from one area, the overall review of responses.
Yeah, I think did we do that geographically?
In the survey booklet, you should see the responses are by geography or by neighborhood.
Oh, well, on the beach side, what, I didn't understand what the center section was. I know, from where to where, I think you have 3 different sections on the beach.
I'm out.
Where did one stop and where, and I know the 2 extremes, but what did you consider the center?
I'm not sure.
Actually, those were the neighborhoods from the first time.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think we changed anything about that, from.
Where do you live, Chris?
I don't know.
Do you notice it's just one house?
I was gonna say, it probably makes sense to be Savannah Road to Freeman Highway, just center.
Yeah.
And then from Freeman Highway would be one side, and then from Savannah Road to the yacht club would be another side.
Yeah.
So how do you want the involvement? Do you want Barbara and Tom to still be involved and then bring that back to the board? That's what, it's kind of where, or do we want to have where we put everything in that one document based off the interviews and the surveys and have that come back for another session to where we would prioritize based off that?
My preference is that Scott Stevens develop it and present it back to the whole board.
I think to Press's point, that checklist is a great way to, consolidate all the things we have, all the other things that we've heard since the interviews and with staff, et cetera, and to do that exercise of ranking them and see where that falls out.
I agree. Come back to the full board. I don't think it worked just
No,
having a subset.
How about the?
unless Max thinks differently. I think that's a no.
How about the vision, mission, principles? Are you good there? You want to look at those again? Because you had some comments in the book. Do you want? You're a new entity. Is there anything that needs changed there if we're looking at other things?
That's a several-hour discussion right there. It's tough to put them together.
Yeah.
Well, I think
It's always tough.
one of the things just to keep in mind is you have to have an identity. So
Right.
I'm not going to say that every election changes, who you are, but you're here to provide for utility services, and that's what you provide. So if you're going to say that every 5 years you're going to change your mission and vision, you're going to lose your identity.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't think I've heard anything different from the mission statement, providing customers with electric, the 4 utilities and other value-added services in a safe, reliable, sustainable, and economic manner with sound business practices.
I don't have comments on that.
Well,
Community
Yeah, that doesn't
engagement.
have comments.
I've learned something from Richard that I think is important, and maybe from you too, Tom, though. It's that we kind of need to define or communicate what, kind of the limits of our responsibility. The sewer, the stormwater thing being a current sort of topic where we collect $7.50 in the minds of so many people, you know, we're responsible for all runoff. Whereas in our minds, we're responsible for 19 pipes that drain out to the canal. You know, and there's a big difference.
It's stormwater management, it's not stormwater, the utility.
Yeah, so if we were going to make any changes up in that, it would be, or maybe it is communications. You know, this is what we're responsible for, and I've heard you sort of follow that line a bunch with, you know, here's our responsibility, we'll live up to that, but we're not responsible for that other thing. Or how it happened, or the,
Yeah, I mean, if it's tweaking like things like changing management to, you know, and I'm totally okay with that, but I think as Patrick said, to start with, I'd be afraid of every 5 years changing.
no, I don't want to do that, but
But and there's nothing wrong.
our limits are
There's nothing wrong
also
with correcting
important.
the grammar or verbs that were, you know, misused or inadvertently misused.
Yeah. What are our value-added services?
We answer the phones. I mean, seriously.
I wondered why that was in there. Other value-added services. I mean, okay, we do collect hazardous waste.
So we do like the programs through Energize Delaware where you have the rebate programs, the
Okay.
discounted LEDs.
Back in the original days, it was fluorescents.
Okay.
Thermostats in the wintertime when we do our, like sometimes Energize Delaware run them with smart thermostats. If you're in the service territory, you get a discount.
Appliance takeaway, old appliances.
Yeah, appliance recycling.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
In the past, there was,
Lewes and Bloom.
yeah.
Oh, right.
In the past, there was a big discussion, and I'm not muddying the water when I say this. It's a big discussion on natural gas within the city. Is that being something discussed at the board level? And there was also a discussion, and a lot of time, because it was one of the first things I did in 2016, which was bringing internet and television to the city.
Yeah, we had discussed internet long before any of you guys were involved. And it was kind of at the beginning phases, but it's been so commoditized now. It's not something that we would ever provide access. It's not like we're a rural area where there's no internet.
Right. Although I was surprised when I first started coming to BPW meetings that internet wasn't under the BPW's purview.
We've made a lot of visits to Easton, because Easton has their own internet and TV service that they're very well known for. It's big out west too. A lot of, I say municipals, but when you have a utility board or commission, a lot of them offer, because if you're building out an AMI system, your backbone is theoretically through fiber. So people are saying if you're building out a fiber network, you're already investing into building that fiber network out. So can you have a value-added service by investing, at the time, I think it was $4 or $5 million in building out a complete fiber network. It connected all of your infrastructure. Like we use wireless for a lot of ours, but wireless is only good if it's a direct pinpoint connection. If you lose it in a storm, you lose it. So, direct connection via fiber, and Mike will tell you this, is the best option. It's the most expensive option. So a lot of people say, if I'm gonna invest in it, if there's something else that can be benefited from it, go ahead and do it. And that was what was discussed in 2016. They were talking about fiber to the home and actually leasing space, like very much like YouTube TV in today's day and age, where you have a license to do local channels, sports channels, and you would offer that service through like a Roku stick, and then you would provide internet as well, and then
Now,
TV.
we could provide music.
You still have that?
No, I work for a company where our controller decided that he could do this by radio stations and so on, and you never want to be the music master.
Oh, I thought you were proposing that we would provide the music.
I'm saying, there are services like TV that just, you couldn't do right. I mean, the commercial guys.
Well, things like internet and Wi-Fi, we live in a competitive environment.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the three major carriers all servicing the area. You've got two for cable, plus dish.
We're not going to jump in the middle and lower the price.
Yeah, but I was surprised that, the leases for those telecoms weren't with us, that they were with the city. Cable,
Talking about the
internet.
franchise?
The franchise.
Yeah.
Franchises, yeah. Because if we're a utility, what do you call those? Yeah.
Well, if we could do it better, maybe that's a thing, but, than the city, but.
All right, so anything else for the good of the cause relative to the strategic plan?
Do we have a path forward for you that?
We do, yep.
All right, I thank everyone. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
You got a
Nope.
call to the public?
Oh, call the
Yes.
public, and Bill,
Yes.
is Bill on the line still?
Yeah, call to the public first.
Bill dropped off? Okay,
So you got call to the public.
call the public. Anyone still awake? All right, call the press. Bill had said he was gonna have to drop off. I was surprised he was on as long as he was. And he will listen to the tape afterwards. Now, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
See how long we wait. Second.
All those in favor?
Thank you, Max.
all.